It begins, not with a scream, but with a scent. Do you know it? The smell of ozone after a lightning strike, and the coppery tang of blood that has just begun to congeal. It's a perfume of endings. I smell it now, as I smelled it then. It clings to the back of my throat, a phantom taste of a world I was born to judge. It is the scent of Nostromo. But you do not wish to hear about smells. You want a story. You want a confession. You lean into the darkness of your room, the glow of this screen the only light on your face, and you crave the chill that runs down the spine. You are safe, you think. This is just a tale. But a tale is a seed. And some seeds, once planted in the fertile soil of a listening mind, grow into terrible, beautiful things. They put down roots in your dreams. They bloom in your silent moments. This story, my story, is such a seed. So listen. Listen closely. I am Konrad Curze. And I was justice. It was not always a scent. In the beginning, it was a sound. A single, repeating note. A drip, 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 drip. It was the sound of nutrient-rich fluid leaking from a corroded pipe in the bowels of the city I would one day call my home. A metronome counting down the seconds of my life before I even knew what life was. I was adrift in a sarcophagus of steel and starlight, a ghost ship sailing on solar winds, and that sound, that infernal, patient drip, was my first companion. My brothers. I saw them in my dreams. Flickers of gold and fire, of intellect and rage. They were born into light, into purpose. I was born into a dripping dark, the only light the cold, unforgiving glare of my own future reflected back at me. I saw it all. Every death I would cause. Every scream I would elicit. Every lesson I would teach in fear and blood. I saw my father, a giant of impossible light, and I saw him turn his face from me. I saw my end, broken and betrayed, and I saw the long, dark road that led there. It was not a possibility. It was a memory of things to come. My curse was to be a reader of a book whose ending was already written, forced to turn every page, to live every line. And the book began with Nostromo. Imagine a world without a sun. A planet of perpetual night, where the very air is a poison and the ground is a tomb. Nostromo Quintus. A city planet, a canker growth of adamantium and despair, stacked so high its spires scraped the void, and dug so deep its foundations were laid upon the bones of the forgotten. Its light was not that of a star, but the sickly, neon glow of vice. Advertisements for chem brothels and neural scalping parlors, the cold blue of enforcer lumiglobes, and the intermittent, angry red of smelting vents spewing their filth into the eternal black. This was my inheritance, a kingdom of shadows. When my ship tore through the atmospheric grime and I stepped onto a rooftop landing pad, the first breath I took, it was not air. It was a solid thing. It was the taste of acid rain, of recycled exhaust, of fierce sweat and cheap stims. It was the taste of sin. And it was familiar. It was the taste of my dreams. They were waiting for me. The powerful, the lords of the high spires, dressed in opulent robes that cost more than a Havelock's annual oxygen supply, their faces polished and plump, their eyes like dead fish. They offered me fealty. They offered me tribute, chests of raw adamantium, of refined promethium, of Nostroman diamonds, black as the void and just as cold. One of them, a man named Jinder, with fingers laden with rings that clicked when he gestured, spoke. "Great being," he said, his voice slick with false reverence. "You have come to deliver us. We pledge ourselves to you. Our world is yours." I looked at him, and I saw, not the words he spoke, but the truth behind them. I saw the child he had thrown into a smelter for weeping too loudly during one of his orgies. I saw the contracts he held that traded in human souls. I saw the poison in the water he sanctioned. I saw the hollow, grinning skull beneath his well-fed face. My voice, when it came, was not a roar. It was a rasp of stone on stone. It carried in the thin, toxic air, silencing the false welcomes. "I am not here for your tribute," I said. "I am not here for your pledges." I took a step forward. The deck plating groaned under my weight. They shrank back, a flock of brightly plumed birds before a storm. I am here, I whispered, and the whisper cut through them like a scalpel. For the ledger. Jinder blinked. The ledger, my lord? The ledger of this world, I said, and it is out of balance. I moved past them, my form swallowing the neon light. I walked to the edge of the spire and looked down into the abyssal city. Miles below, in the sump and the underhive, 1,000,000 lives were lived in squalor and terror. 1,000,000 crimes were being committed at that very moment. 1,000,000 injustices cried out for answer. And I heard every single one. That was the first night of the new dispensation. I took Jinder. Not his wealth. Not his oaths. Him. I carried him from his palace of glass and chrome, down, through the layers of the city. Past the mercantile zones, through the rusting industrial belts, into the stinking, crowded habwarrens where the air was a thick soup of decay. He screamed. He begged. He offered me everything. I did not speak. I brought him to a public forum, a wide, trash-strewn concourse where the wretched of Nostromo gathered to barter their pitiful belongings and their own bodies. I held him aloft, this plump, perfumed prince of the spire, for all to see. And I spoke. My voice, amplified by the architecture of my armor, boomed across the cavernous space, echoing down the choked thoroughfares. This man, I declared, is a thief. He has stolen your breath with his poisoned air. He is a murderer. He has slain your children with his greed. He is a slaver. He has chained your futures with his contracts. I looked at the sea of gaunt, pale faces, their eyes wide with a terror that was now mingled with something else, a fragile, dangerous spark. Hope. This world is sick, I continued. It thrives on darkness. But I am not here to bring you light. Light is a lie. It blinds. It creates false comfort. I am here to bring you truth. And the truth is this: there is a price for every sin, a consequence for every crime. The scales will be balanced. I turned to Jinder. My fingers, long and pale, curled around his throat. The sentence, I said, my voice dropping to an intimate, horrific whisper that every soul in that plaza heard as if I were standing beside them, is death. And I executed him. It was not a quick death. It was a performance. A lesson. I illustrated the consequences of his actions upon his own body. I made his flesh a canvas for his crimes. When it was over, when the last, wet sigh had escaped his lips, I hung his remains from a towering statue of some forgotten Nostroman tyrant, a testament to the new law. There was no cheering. There was only a profound, ringing silence. A silence of awe, of terror, of understanding. This was my justice. It was absolute. It was merciless. It was beautiful. In the days and nights that followed, for on Nostromo, the distinction is arbitrary, marked only by the shifting patterns of artificial light and the collective rhythm of a world's despair. I walked the city. I became a specter in its veins. I did not hunt. I pruned. A gang lord who extorted protection rations from a hab-block was found flayed, his skin stretched across the entrance to his own territory. A corrupt enforcer who sold his prisoners to the flesh smiths was discovered with his own weapon fused into his chest, the barrel pointed at his heart. A merchant who diluted life-saving medicines with drain cleaner was force-fed his entire stock until his insides dissolved. I was not a king. I was a principal. I was the final, inarguable equation of cause and effect. The city began to call me the Night Haunter, a name born from the whispers of children, from the frantic prayers of the guilty. I approved. I did not haunt the night. I was the night, and my reign was just. My legion arrived in time. They came from the black ships, tall and pale, their eyes dark pools reflecting the world they were born to cleanse. My sons, the VIIth Legion. They saw what I had built. They saw the order I had carved from the chaos. They saw the fear that kept the streets clean, that made the powerful tremble in their spires. They knelt, and I gave them their purpose. We are not warriors, I told them, my voice echoing in the vast hangar of my flagship, the Nightfall. We are not conquerors. We are surgeons. This galaxy is a body riddled with a cancer of sin. Our duty is to cut it out. We are the scalpels. We are the final diagnosis. We do not offer hope. We offer consequence. I looked into each of their faces, these reflections of my own darkness. We are judgment. And our work begins now. And for a time, it worked. Nostromo changed. The overt crimes, the brazen cruelty of the powerful, vanished. The air, while still toxic, seemed to lose its stench of open corruption. The streets, while still dark, were no longer running with blood. A new kind of silence fell over the planet. Not a peaceful silence, but the silence of a held breath. The silence of a population waiting for the other boot to drop. We took this silence with us into the stars. We brought our justice to world after world. We were the last resort. When diplomacy failed, when armies faltered, when the rot was too deep for any other legion to countenance, they called for us. We would descend upon a world not with war horns, but with a profound, suffocating quiet. Our ships were ghosts in the void. Our arrival was announced not by broadcast, but by the disappearance of the guilty. A governor would be found in his secure bunker, his heart stopped, a single, black feather placed on his chest. A rebel commander would address his troops, only to have his head vanish from his shoulders in the middle of a sentence, his body standing for a full minute before it crumpled. We were efficient. We were precise. We were the embodiment of a terrible, necessary truth. But here, in the quiet of my chambers, surrounded by the ghosts of my own visions, I felt the first cracks in my perfect, crystalline justice. It was the eyes of my sons. When they had first come to me, their eyes had held a flicker of something human. Confusion, perhaps. Awe. Maybe even horror. But now, as they carried out my will, their eyes became like mine. Dark. Reflective. Empty. They were not merely enacting justice. They were enjoying it. There was a captain, Iago Sevitarian. My firstborn. My finest instrument. His mind was a razor, his loyalty absolute. But I saw the way he would linger over a particularly complex execution. I saw the slight, almost imperceptible smile that would touch his lips when a victim broke, when their will shattered and they confessed everything. He was not just balancing the scales. He was savoring the weight. I confronted him once, on the bridge of the Nightfall, after we had pacified the world of Tsigwalsa. The pacification had been, by any measure, a masterpiece of psychological terror. The planet's ruling theocracy had surrendered without a single legionary setting foot on the soil. We had broken them with nightmares, with whispers, with the ghosts of their own sins. The price was paid, Father, Sevatar said, his voice a dry rustle. The ledger is balanced. Is it? I asked, watching the dead world turn below us. I saw you, Iago. In the final transmission from their high priest. You showed him artistry. Sevatar was silent for a moment. The punishment must fit the crime. His was a crime of fanaticism, of twisting faith into a weapon. I merely illustrated the logical conclusion of his beliefs. You flayed his skin and wrote his own scriptures upon it, I said, my voice flat. It was a powerful lesson, he replied, and there was no remorse in his tone. Only a cold, logical certainty. It will deter others. It is efficient. The word echoed in the hollow space between us. Was that all it was? Was my beautiful, terrible justice merely a form of efficiency? A cosmic housekeeping? That night, the visions returned with a vengeance. They were no longer just memories of the future. They were possibilities. Fractured, shimmering paths. I saw a version of myself, clad in the same night-black armor, but his face was a rictus of pure, undiluted madness. He was not a judge. He was a predator. He reveled in the terror. He bathed in the blood. He was not balancing scales. He was breaking them for the pleasure of hearing them shatter. This was the self I had seen from my pod, the self I had fought against. The terror. But I saw another path, too. A fainter, more difficult path. A path where justice was not about fear, but about restoration. About building, not just breaking. A path where I stood not as a night-haunting specter, but as a builder of courts, a creator of laws that lasted beyond the point of a blade. It was a path of light, and it felt alien. Weak. A lie told to children. I awoke from these visions sweating, my heart's hammering against my ribs. The scent of ozone and blood was thick in my nostrils. Which was the true path? The justice of the scalpel, or the justice of the architect? The choice was a poison in my veins. It began to split me, to fracture the perfect, cold diamond of my certainty. And then came the shepherds of Eden. It was a world on the fringe of the galactic east, a verdant, pastoral planet designated LX 1138. They called themselves the shepherds, and they had resisted compliance. Not with weapons, not with armies. They simply refused. They lived in perfect, isolated communes, their technology minimal, their society built on a philosophy of radical pacifism and communal ownership. They had no government, no military, no currency. They had no crime. The imperial envoy had been baffled. The diplomats had failed. The world eaters had been sent in and had only succeeded in creating martyrs. The ultramarines had tried to build infrastructure, and the shepherds had simply walked away from it, letting it be reclaimed by the forest. The emperor, in his infinite wisdom, dispatched us. The night haunters. The final argument. We descended into their atmosphere. There was no orbital defense. No ground-to-air batteries. Our ships settled on great, grassy plains under a warm, yellow sun. It was disorienting. The light was real. It hurt my eyes. The air was clean. It carried the scent of loam, of growing things, of simple, unperfumed human bodies. The shepherds came to meet us. They were not afraid. They walked out from their wooden longhouses, men and women with calm, open faces, dressed in simple, homespun cloth. They carried no weapons. Their leader was an old woman, her face a map of wrinkles, her eyes the color of dark soil. She looked up at me, a giant of midnight ceramite, surrounded by my death-pale sons, and she smiled. It was not a smile of welcome or of fear. It was a smile of pity. "You are lost," she said, her voice soft but carrying. "You have come so far, through such darkness, and you are so very lost." I felt a surge of something hot and ugly in my chest. Anger. How dare she? This primitive, this ignorant speck. I was justice incarnate. I was order. I was clarity. "I am Konrad Curze," I boomed, my voice shattering the pastoral silence. Birds fled from the trees. "I am here to bring this world into compliance with the Imperium of man. You will swear fealty to my father, the Emperor of Terra." The old woman, whose name was Alara, did not flinch. "We swear fealty to no man," she said. "We tend to the land and to each other. That is our only law. Your law is anarchy." I countered, taking a step forward, my shadow falling over her. "Your pacifism is a weakness that invites predators. Your lack of structure is a sin against the future of humanity." "Is it a sin to live in peace?" she asked, her head tilted. "Is it a crime to harm no one? Look at us. Where is your ledger? What price must we pay?" I looked. I used my sight, my cursed, perfect sight, and I peered into the fabric of their lives. I searched for the hidden crimes, the secret violences, the rot that must surely be festering beneath this idyllic surface. And I found nothing. Oh, there were small things. A stolen kiss that was not entirely welcome. A child's lie. A moment of envy for a neighbor's larger harvest. But these were not the stuff of my justice. They were the fleeting, petty flaws of mortal beings. There was no murder. No theft on a scale that mattered. No corruption of power, because they had no power to corrupt. My justice had no purchase here. My scalpel had nothing to cut. It was then that the true horror dawned on me. My entire purpose, the core of my being, was predicated on the existence of sin. I was a predator evolved to hunt a specific prey. And on this world, that prey did not exist. I was obsolete. "You see," Alara said, her voice still gentle. "There is no room for you here. Your justice is a phantom. It needs darkness to give it form. In the light, it vanishes. You should go. Find a place that needs your particular gifts. This is not that place." Sevatar stepped to my side. "Father," he murmured, his voice a low, dangerous thrum. "Their refusal is itself a crime. Their pacifism is a defiance of the imperial truth. The ledger is unbalanced. They owe a debt of compliance. Let me illustrate the cost of their refusal." I looked at him. I saw the eagerness in his dark eyes. He was not seeing a philosophical problem. He was seeing a target that refused to be afraid. It offended him. It offended the very principle of our legion. And I was tempted, so terribly tempted, to unleash him, to show these shepherds the true face of the darkness they so blithely claimed did not exist, to paint their green fields red, to hang their pacifist corpses from their own trees, to teach them the ultimate lesson, that their peace was a lie because the universe itself was not peaceful. It was a lesson they deserved to learn. But something stayed my hand. The memory of that other path. The path of the architect. The path of light. No, I said, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. There will be no enforcement. The silence from my sons was more shocking than any protest. I felt their confusion, their disbelief, radiating from them like heat. Father, Sevatar began, his voice tight. I have spoken, I said, my tone final. This world is compliant in its own way. They offer no threat. They drain no resources. They can be left as they are. A testament. A testament to what? Sevatar hissed. To defiance? To lawlessness? To a different way, I said, and even I did not fully believe the words. We will withdraw. We left the shepherds of Eden that day. We boarded our ships and ascended into the void, leaving the green world and its yellow sun behind. The silence on my flagship was thicker than any I had known on Nostromo. It was a silence of judgment from my own sons. And in that silence, the madness began to truly sing to me. It started as a whisper in the ventilation shafts. A voice that was my own, yet not my own. You were weak, it hissed. You saw a world that did not need your justice, and it broke you. You are a fraud, Konrad. A hypocrite. Your beautiful scales are a child's toy. True justice is universal. It must be applied to the guilty and the innocent alike, for is not innocence itself a form of arrogance? A defiance of the universe's inherent cruelty? I tried to shut it out. I meditated. I reviewed battle logs. I walked the halls of my ship. But the voice followed me. Sevatar was right. It murmured from the shadows cast by a flickering lumen globe. The shepherd's crime was their refusal to acknowledge the darkness. That is the greatest crime of all. To live in a lie. You should have taught them. You should have carved the truth into their flesh, so that even in their dying moments, they would understand the nature of the reality they had denied. I began to see things. Flashes of what I should have done. Alara, her gentle eyes wide with a terror she never knew existed, as I slowly explained the logic of pain to her. The grassy plains, churned to mud and blood. The wooden longhouses, burning like pyres against the clean, blue sky. It would have been a masterpiece. The ultimate lesson. A lesson in terror. Back on Nostromo, the consequences of my failure bloomed like a black flower. The silence I had cultivated had curdled. The powerful, seeing that my justice was not, perhaps, as absolute as they had feared, began to test its boundaries. The fear that had kept them in check was fading, and what was left was not virtue, but a more cunning, more deeply buried form of corruption. Crime returned. Not the open, brutal crime of the old days, but a subtle, systemic rot. Economic enslavement. Psychological manipulation. Bureaucratic murder. It was a cancer that had learned to hide from the surgeon's blade. My sons, left to govern in my absence, began to interpret my teachings in their own way. Without a clear, guiding hand, their sense of justice became warped. Sevatar, in particular, became a law unto himself. His punishments grew more elaborate, more cruel. He was no longer just balancing scales. He was making art out of agony. He was proving a point, that in a universe of shadows, the greatest power belonged to the one who could cast the darkest. I returned to a world that was slipping back into the abyss. The scent of ozone and blood was stronger than ever, and the voice in my head was now a constant companion, a counsel of one. You see? It crowed as I walked through the familiar, stinking streets. You tried to be just, and all you did was create a more sophisticated monster. Your justice is a delicate instrument, Konrad. It requires a steady hand. But terror is a hammer. It does not need to be precise. It only needs to fall. I gathered my legion in the great, echoing amphitheater where I had first executed gender. They stood in silent ranks, their pale faces like a field of skulls. Sevatar stood before them, his head held high, his eyes burning with a fervent, dark light. My sons, I began, my voice hoarse from the whispers. I have been contemplative. I have seen a world without sin, and I have seen our world, which is sin incarnate. I have tried to be a surgeon, but a surgeon cannot operate on a body that is nothing but disease. I paused, the words hanging in the toxic air. We have been too subtle, I said, and I felt a terrible, freeing certainty wash over me. The fracture in my soul was healing, but it was fusing into something harder, darker. We have been trying to cure a sickness that is the natural state of this universe. It is not a sickness to be cured. It is a truth to be embraced. I looked at Sevatar, and I saw the ghost of a smile on his lips. He understood. Justice is a concept for a higher race, I declared, my voice rising, taking on a new, ragged edge. A race that does not yet exist. For humanity, in its current, flawed state, there is only one language it truly understands. One teacher that can command its absolute attention. I raised my hand, my talons glinting in the neon gloom. Terror. A sound went through the legion. A low, hungry exhalation. It was the sound of release. From this moment forth, I thundered, we are no longer just the judges. We are the lesson itself. We will not merely punish crime. We will become the very embodiment of fear. We will haunt their dreams. We will turn their own shadows against them. We will teach them that the universe is a dark and monstrous place, and that the only law is the law of the predator. We will be their nightmares made flesh. The roar that answered me was not one of discipline, but of ecstasy. It was the sound of damnation, willingly embraced. And I let it wash over me. I embraced the terror. I let the other path, the path of the architect, the path of light, wither and die in my soul. It was a relief. It was so much easier than trying to be good, than trying to be just. The descent, once begun, was swift. Nostromo became a laboratory of horror. We refined our methods. We learned that a population could be controlled not just by punishing crimes, but by making every citizen feel complicit. By making them fear their own neighbors, their own families, their own thoughts. We created the infamous theater of penance, where random citizens were selected and subjected to grotesque, symbolic punishments for crimes they might only have considered committing. We taught them that a fleeting moment of envy was as damning as murder, because it sprang from the same poisoned root. I no longer walked the streets as a specter of justice. I ruled from a throne of bleached bones in the deepest, darkest spire, surrounded by the flickering images of 1,000 ongoing atrocities, each one a brushstroke in my masterpiece of dread. The voice in my head was no longer a whisper, it was my own voice. It was my true self, finally unchained. The final step in my descent came with the destruction of Nostromo itself. The planet had become a problem. The corruption had become so ingrained, so clever, that even our most extreme methods could not eradicate it. It was a hydra. For every head we cut off, 2 more grew in the darkness. The planet was producing a weaker, more deceitful breed of human, and it was infecting my legion. Recruits were arriving who were already twisted, who enjoyed the terror for its own sake, not as a tool, but as an end. The voice on my throne was clear. You made this world, it said. You shaped it in your image. And now it reflects your failure. It is a flawed creation, a monument to your weakness. A true artist must be willing to destroy his own work when it is no longer perfect. Sevatar came to me. The planet is lost, Father. It is a nest of vipers. We cannot control it. I know, I said, my voice calm, devoid of the rage that had once consumed me. I felt a profound, cosmic clarity. What is your will? He asked. I looked at the planet below, a black diamond glittering in the void. My home. My masterpiece. My failure. Bring the planet killer, I said. There was no hesitation in Sevatar's eyes. Only a dark approval. As you command. The order was given. The cyclonic torpedoes were loaded. As the launch sequence counted down, I stood on the bridge of the nightfall, watching the world of my birth fill the view screen. I thought of the shepherds of Eden, of their green world and their clean air. I thought of the path I had not taken. It seemed like a fairy tale now, a story for fools. The torpedoes launched. Streaks of light, beautiful in their purity, arcing down towards the dark jewel. This was not justice. This was not even terror. This was tidying up. The explosion was silent in the vacuum. A bloom of light, then fire, then the planet cracking apart like an egg, its molten core spilling into the void. Nostromo Quintus ceased to exist. I felt nothing. No triumph. No regret. Only a cold, sterile satisfaction. The equation was solved. The variable was eliminated. And that is where you find me now. Adrift in the silent sea of night, the scent of ozone and blood my only constant companion. I am Konrad Curze. I was justice. I became terror. And now, I am nothing. A ghost in a machine of my own making. My father will come for me soon. I have seen it. My brother, the angel, will be there. I will let him kill me. It is the final part of the vision. The last page of the book. But before I go, I leave you with this. You, sitting in your safe little room, listening to my confession. You think this is just a story. You think the monster is contained within this tale, that you can switch me off and return to your world of light and reason. But I am not in the story. I am in the silence that follows. I am in the dark behind your eyes. I am the seed of dread now planted in your mind. And long after this voice has faded, you will remember. You will look at the shadows in your room and wonder if they're just shadows. You will hear a drip in your house and feel a chill that has nothing to do with the temperature. You will see injustice in your world, the petty cruelties, the systemic sins, and you will hear my whisper, asking you the only question that truly matters. What is to be done? You will search for an answer. You will look for justice. But you will find only two paths. The difficult, impossible path of building something better in the light, or the easy, terrible path of becoming the darkness that forces them to be good. And in that moment of choice, in that sliver of time between thought and action, I will be there. The night is long and full of terrors, but the longest night is the one you carry inside you. Sleep well.